Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kingsford Nascence, or Nascence. I'm actually not 100% sure exactly how to pronounce it. I'll let you guys look at it right here, but this is a production collaboration with Kaiser, who is Kingsford Knives. They are a small custom shop located in Australia. They do a custom version of this knife, but this production version is obviously much less expensive. Still expensive, but much less expensive than the customs, and they're able to have more of them made, which is really cool. This is a super interesting knife for a lot of different reasons, namely that super high polished gold anode that we've got right there in contrast with some nice sort of gunmetal blasted parts. Really, really cool. The knife runs on bearings, but also comes with very thick phosphor bronze washers, which we're going to install. Actually, I'll give you a demonstration of that later. But this is really cool. If you're watching this at the time that I upload it, it's available. So you guys can check it out if you want to. I'll link it right down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Kingsford Knives for sending it in. Kingsford Knives for sending it in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at the_metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of the Nascence. I'm gonna dedicate to Nascence. It's probably Nascence, and you guys can make fun of me. That's fine. 7.75 inches overall. Blade length is about 3 1/4. Cutting edge is a little over 3 1/8. Let's do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 80-10 and the 80-20.5. Definitely much closer to the size of the 80-20.5, but it does have more cutting edge because of the blade to handle ratio. So let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. The same overall length, roughly, as the Hogue Deca, but definitely a little bit more robust. And then finally, let's put it up against, I did that backwards, the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. All right, how's the action on this knife? It's very good. If you're familiar with Kaiser knives, this knife feels very similar to other knives that Kaiser has made, and in that I mean it's very good. The thumb studs, they've chosen just like a barrel, which is fine. I kind of wish that it had something more, something like this, right, with the little steps on it. But I'd be lying if I told you that it was difficult to open. I mean, maybe a little bit on the reverse flick. But doing the thumb flick, because of how much scalloping is here, there's plenty of room to get your finger in behind it, and it's pretty easy to do. You can also just sort of truthfully, that was made a little difficult. If you're going to pinch open it, I would grab the blade and not the studs. But opening the way that it's intended, it's just fine. So would have been nice to get a little bit different thumb stud, but this is all right. And it certainly does look nice. This is a super streamlined design. We have classic knife profiles, blade profile and handle profile, but a great example of being able to take something that has been used a million times and still do something unique with it. So I think that's great. Yeah, the action's fine, the detent is fine, and it runs. It's currently got bearings installed, but like I said, we'll put those washers in here in just a bit. Carry profile, let's do thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is slightly thicker, but it's also, you know what? It's not actually contoured, but these chamfer lines are so heavy, I guess. They're so long that it gives the impression of being contoured. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is not a difficult knife to carry at all. Slightly longer than the Para 3, not quite as tall, and then slightly thicker. What are we looking at for materials? We're looking at a polished bronze or a polished gold anode. I feel like a lot of the anodizing that we see in knives is just not, it's just not quite bright enough. There we go. Oh boy, this is like a rich, there we go. It's really, really nice. It's very, very gold. I think it was important to show that once you guys saw the contrast, but as we continue, if you look at the front and then we look at the back, how dull it is after you touch it, all you do is you can shine it back up. It's kind of a pro and a con to having a finish like this, but it does look really good when the ano is brought out. It would be awesome to see some different colors. But anyways, we have anodized titanium, and then we have a CPM 20 CV blade. And I think the dull kind of acidy finish right here contrasts so well with the bronze. I think that looks so good, even when it's dulled. I like that there's no reflectivity whatsoever on a lot of the hardware. And honestly, I think I would have preferred that the pocket clip be, because it's actually anode as well. I think I would have preferred that it was the same as the blade and the hardware. And I also would have preferred a little backspacer back here, but that's fine. No big deal. Just really, really nice. So CPM 20 CV, titanium frame, and a titanium pocket clip is what we're looking at for materials. And then we have no milling whatsoever on the internals for weight reduction. So what are we looking at for weight here on the Nascence or Nascence? I'm sure it's a word that like means something and like everybody else in the whole world like uses it regularly. That's what it seems to be. All these words that I'm learning from like pocket knives, like people are having to get creative with naming their pocket knives, and you know, people tell me like, yeah, that's like a totally common word, and I'm like mispronouncing it. So I'm sure that that's also the case here. It weighs 4.1 ounces, which is fine. I don't consider that light or heavy. 4 ounces roughly to me is kind of middle of the road. With a 3 1/4 inch blade, it's obviously not perfect ratios, but it's also not bad, right? The balance is behind the pivot a ways, but it's right in the middle of where your index is going to be when you grip it like this. So the knife doesn't really feel heavy. If anything, slightly butt heavy, but not bad. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. We're going to use a T8, and we're going to actually go ahead, and I don't normally do this, but we're going to go ahead and disassemble it so that I can put those washers in there. And I'm curious to take a look at the other side. And of course, what we're looking at here is unfortunately a free spinning pivot, which means it's not captive. And that means that we have to use, and I should have known that looking, you know, and seeing that there were fasteners on both sides, but that means we have to use another bit. And that's not fun. In this day and age, I really, really would prefer that one's too big. I would prefer that we have, you know, pivots that are captive, or a D-shaped pivot barrel, right? Something like that, so that you only need to adjust one side. It's not like, you know, it stops you completely from being able to take the knife apart, but as you can see here, this is mine. So I know some people are cringing like, oh, he's going to scratch it up. It stops you from having to do this, which is not only a little bit annoying, but it's also a little, it's kind of dangerous. Like if you slip, or, you know, if you have the blade out, or the blade comes out, it's not ideal. So not impossible, but it's still a little bit obnoxious. Working with a little bit of Loctite there. We're going to take out these two body screws. Fortunately, this is a simple frame lock knife, so it is not something that is difficult. Even with having to use two drivers here, not something that is overly difficult for anybody. You don't have to be, you know... You don't have to be well versed in the art of disassembly. Listen to me dragging this out with words that have lots of syllables so that I don't have any, you know, dead time while I'm talking. So there you go. We do have the bearings running on a like a steel washer there. And then we'll take the blade out real quick. I'm trying to keep everything kind of together. So there's the bearings. We're going to take the other bearing out. See if I can actually get it. Yeah, we'll just do that there. We'll put that back in. And then I am always curious when you can, you know, if like there's, in this case, we have like custom ultra thick washers. I'm always curious about how any particular knife might run on, you know, phosphor bronze, if it's, you know, if it's both. Phosphor bronze, the benefit, and you might be wondering, why would you do that? You're just making the knife not have as good of action. Most of the time, but you also, you know, the phosphor bronze are ideal for dirty or dusty environments. I think what I'm also going to do, just to make sure that we do this justice, is I'm going to add a little tiny bit of 10-weight nano oil, which I very much recommend that you guys get. It's very cheap. It's also in my Amazon store. We're just going to do a dot on each side, which is probably still overkill. And then we're going to do just a little bit also on the detent ball path, just a little tiny bit. And when I say a little tiny bit, I mean way too much. I'm going to recommend that you guys get that, because a lot of times if you have like action that's not super satisfying, or you're changing something out to, phosphor bronze or whatever, a lot of times that can really make the action more towards what you expected it to be, I guess. So a super important detail that I almost missed is these little steel washers, they need to come out, which you can kind of dig in there with the bit if you want to, just be careful. But they need to come out in order for the phosphor bronze to fit correctly. So make sure that you do that. I'll give you guys an example when I adjust this other, or not adjust, but get it out of the other side. But this one right here, it's just got a little tiny lip, and you can just grab at it just like that. Probably something you guys could figure out on your own, but just in case, if you're brand new and you're like, no, I need a step-by-step, right? I get it. Put that washer back on there, and then kind of push it down like this. Great. Okay, so we're going to put the pivot screw back in first. Get that down. I do not expect the action to be anywhere near as good as bearings, but that's okay as long as I can still flick it out. I think that's fine. I'm not 100% convinced that that is actually threading in, so give me a second. And let's see. There we go. Okay, it's because it's free spinning, of course. And then let's go ahead and put these screws back in. These screws back in. This is why I love it when the whole thing is, number one, larger size than T6, preferably T8 or larger. And then it's also much easier when there are only a couple of fasteners per side, and when each fastener is the same size, because the entire process is made much easier. Obviously, having a free spinning pivot makes the process a little bit more frustrating. That screw, for some reason, is not wanting to go all the way in. Always one or two little teeny tiny hang-ups, but let's just try this again. I think it was just not wanting to thread. But having all of those little things exactly right makes the disassembly process quite a bit easier. Wondering why do we have, oh, there we go. It's just a long thread there. Okay, so the end result here is actually not bad at all. Do we have any blade play? Wow, we really don't. Okay. So it's not fall shut, but I gotta be honest with you here. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Now I'm thinking probably the 10 weight made a little bit of a difference, especially on the detent ball path. A lot of people like to cake the washers themselves in this stuff. Washers need a drop probably maximum. You guys saw me put 2 drops and like did both sides. That's like massive overkill, right? It's a habit that I'm unable to break, right? But it's fine. You're just going to have a lot of leakage. Really, though, what's going to help a lot is putting it on the detent ball path, right? Because that's where, as this blade is riding around, that detent ball is dragging on that blade. So that's really nice. But it actually came back, boy, pretty darn center. Maybe if anything, like slightly left. But yeah, I'm thinking that looks pretty darn good. But the action is actually pretty nice. Not going to be fall shut, and this might break in a little bit over time, but not bad though for phosphor bronze. Pretty impressive. Yeah, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised. Okay, cool. Well, there you go. It's nice that they include that. So if you're somebody who's like, yeah, bearings, whatever, I'll take phosphor bronze because of where I use my knife. There you go. You get both, and it's obviously not difficult to do. So, anyways, huge mess on my tabletop here, but we'll just go ahead and move on. We weighed it, right? We did weigh it. We did the hardware check. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness real quick. So, blade stock thickness on this guy is coming in at about 132 thousandths, about the middle of the road. All right, moving on to the meat and potatoes here. This is a very straightforward knife, full flat grind. I would say not incredibly thin behind the edge, but thin enough. I mean, this is a great general EDC profile that has been done a bajillion times. And the reason that we see it so often is because it works, right? I mean, it works. This is a great blade shape. Being able to choke up right behind the edge, honestly, gives this knife a lot more ergonomic openness than you would expect, because it kind of at times appears like a smaller knife, but it also isn't a smaller knife, right? And then you get it in hand and you choke up on it and you're like, actually, it's quite a bit of blade, right? The thumb studs clear the like 99.9% of the cutting path, right? But considering you're probably going to be cutting at an angle even if you push straight down, yeah, it's great. The tip, it's a tip. Started that, and I was like, what unique thing did I have to say about the tip? Nothing. It's a blade tip, right? Nice belly. It's just very, very similar to the Ontario rat blade, and it works. It works really, really well. The finish you would think would create drag, but no, it's actually really, really smooth. It almost looks like it would be a textured finish. It isn't. I don't mind the Kingsford logo, and I think the reason I don't mind it is because it's not a satin blade where the contrast is like super heavy. You can just barely see it. Same thing on the other side. This is CPM 20 CV, which is great. I don't have an issue with that. I think the blade geometry and overall profile is fine for CPM 20 CV. To my knowledge, Kaiser does a good job with their 20 CV heat treat. I've never heard anybody complain or say that it's super duper low. I don't have Rockwell testing equipment. This thing seemed to cut just fine. The edge did not fatigue in the way that it does when the Rockwell hardness is very low. I always remember the Sativian blade that we ended up finding out through another channel that the Rockwell hardness was like 57. Yeah, you will definitely notice that. I'm talking like a few cuts into cardboard and the edge becomes dull. So that's not what I experienced with this guy, so I have to imagine that the heat treat is at least reasonable. Industry standard is 59 to 61. I would venture to guess it's at least in that range, perhaps better, but it's fine. Ergonomic comfort is very good. The pocket clip is not super long. It's milled and knocked down at the edges. Standard grip is fine. Choked up grip is better. This heavy chamfering, and honestly, if this were a thinner handle, I think it would bother me. But because there's a little bit of meat on the bones, yeah, it feels pretty good. I feel pretty locked in despite having a really slippery surface right here, which I don't mind because the knife is really nice to look at. This looks like a premium object. You could hand this to somebody who knows absolutely nothing about pocket knives, and I can almost guarantee they would say, this is an expensive knife, isn't it? Right? I mean, a lot of times it's funny how people who don't know about knives, you hand them certain knives and they're like, this feels cheap, right? Hand somebody who doesn't know who Benchmade is, who doesn't know about knives, right? They're carrying the Milwaukee Fastback. Hand them a Benchmade bug out and see what they say. I promise. I'm not saying that weight is indicative of quality and value all the time. I'm just saying, like, you know, sometimes it's easy to tell and sometimes it's not. This is the type of knife you hand to somebody and they're going to say, this is a nice knife. I can tell, right? And it is. They would be correct. It is a nice knife. They're not doing anything special here with the hardware. They're not doing anything special with the blade. But these heavy chamfer lines and this area in here and the fact that it's polished ano, which will wear off over time. If you use this all the time and you're constantly handling it and you're tossing it around and really using it like a knife, yeah, the ano will wear off over time, right? I would love to see like a plain, like just like a raw titanium high polished finish, because then there's no ano to wear off. But I would also love to see this in blue and green and purple. I mean, this is cool. I really like this high reflectivity, this like satin ano finish. I think it's really, really nice. There's no backspacer at all. But that's fine. It doesn't need a backspacer. I like that the stop pin is also a standoff. I mean, we don't really need another standoff back here. So that's fine. It minimizes the hardware. I think that's a smart design element. The pocket clip is nested into the frame. No option for lefties. Unfortunately, really need to have an option for lefties. No option on this one, but one screw into the frame, which is fine. Retention is great on the pocket clip. There's a nice short little ramp underneath, in and out of the pocket, very smooth. Steel lock bar insert doubling as the over travel stop. That's what we expect. Stop pin, like I said, way back here. No shouldering, but it doesn't need it. Like I said, no blade play. Up, down, left to right, nothing. No pivot lash. Very smooth and consistent. I'm pleasantly surprised with those washers. And again, I know a lot of people are like, do you put the Because you put the 10 weight nano oil on. You should have 10 weight nano oil. This stuff is cheap. You know how long I've had this? I'm just now running out. I'm pretty sure I bought this 5 years ago. And I've been squirting it, just super soaking my knife. I've been using 5 to 10 times the amount that I'm supposed to per knife. I also think I left this upside down with the cap off in my toolbox and drained about a third of it. So even being an idiot and squeezing it all over the place, still going to last you about 5 years. Highly recommendable 10 weight nano oil. But I honestly think even without it, it would have been fine. Phosphor bronze washers are self-lubricating. Over time, they'll break in anyway. So if this is only going to get better, I think that's great. My only critiques here with this knife, thumb studs, just do something like the Rat. Like, that'd be perfect. And then also, we got to do a D-shaped pivot barrel. Or change the opposite side. Like, give this some sort of, like, make the pivot itself D-shaped on the head. And then a circular barrel, and then like mill out the, because then, you know, that line, like the back of the D, would actually run right with this line, which I think would be really cool. Is that parallel? I always get parallel and perpendicular mixed up. You guys are learning a lot about how stupid I actually am within this review. This is a wonderful, wonderful knife. I think early pre-orders of this thing, people were getting it for $200, which I thought was, honestly, I was like, you're going to run a little low there, truthfully, which I don't usually say that. The price of these right now, if you want to pick one up, is $240, which I honestly think is right on the line. I think that's right on the money. I think that's exactly what these should be. Quality build, you get the cool factor with a high polish ano. You get the thick phosphor bronze washers in there that work really, really well. Great cutting profile, great materials all the way around. I think this is just a really, really cool knife. Like I said, the best part about it is it's a profile that a lot of people love, and the personality is in the polishing and the chamfering and just the contrast with the different finishes. Consider more colors. That would be really cool. I love this. It's extremely recommendable. If you are in this territory, this is expensive territory for sure. $240 is a lot for a pocket knife. Hardly the most expensive, though. Believe me, if this is new to you, wait till you find out about multi-$1,000 pocket knives. But if you're familiar with this territory, this is extremely competitive and highly recommendable at $240. So that'll be going in my most recommended knives playlist. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.